Let's try this again. Not seeing any sound. What happened to my microphone? Oh, I guess it works. We'll give it another shot. I tried to do a movie review just now and didn't cooperate with. This one's called Don't Look in the Basement 2, 4.2 out of 10, 459 ratings. So this is going to be another Indian recommendation. I'm giving it 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was confusing, but there were some parts that were weird and crazy. For instance, the doctors and the orderlies appeared to be crazier than the patients in some cases. And but you're saying to yourself, what in the heck is going on here? Can't figure this out. In 1972, the patients and doctors at Stevens Sanitarium were brutally murdered. Over 40 years later, the only known survivor returns only to find the ghosts of the past have not been resting in peace. More like this, Don't Look in the Basement. The original, Don't Look in the Basement, the 3-hour short, which I can't find anywhere. Keep My Grave Open, and Scum of the Earth. A direct sequel to director S.F. Brownrigg's Don't Look in the Basement, 1973, better known as Don't Look in the Basement, directed by Brownrigg's son, Tony Brownrigg. After the end credits, it says, For Dad, edited from Don't Look in the Basement, 1973. So I guess the son recycled some of Dad's old footage in this one. Soundtracks: Mozart Piano Concerto 23, Adiago, written by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, uncredited, performed by Samuel Smythe. All right. And here's the movie review from The Tsar 2, January 6th, 2018. This one's called Don't Look for the Sequel. The Tsar 2 is given a 2 out of 10. I guess the 2 is for Bishop. Anyways. Man, I was harsh on the first one. Now, after seeing the follow-up, the original was all but masterpiece. When I was a kid, like 9 or so years old, I saw the original low-budget shock fest, and I was scared to death. The low budget of it all, plus the I'm not supposed to see this, but my parents are asleep, and as long as I keep the volume low aspect, was enough to put me over the edge. So when I saw about 2 years too late, realized. So when I just now, about 2 years too late, realized there was a sequel, I decided to spend my Friday night with a double feature of the 2 Don't Look in the Basements because it had such an impact on me. The original still sent shivers down my spine as I recalled how I felt when I was under 10 and seeing such carnage. Yeah, that is kind of young to watch a horror movie. Anyways, and then I started the follow-up close to 40 years after the original. Boy, this was bad. It appears the new creators had no clue what the original was about. Either they only saw clips of the 1973 film, or they only read a synopsis. They made a completely different movie using some of the main characters from back then and morphed it into a literal comedy. To give the synopsis, originally there was an isolated and experimental mental hospital that saw the attempted murder of the only doctor and a new nurse, tricked by a patient into believing she was the new head doctor. Mayhem ensues, and patient Sam murders everyone in order to save said new nurse who escapes. That was part one. Part two takes place in real time, approximately 40 years later, and Sam returns to a new mental hospital run by an enormously incompetent staff, and the tone genre completely shifts. Oh, and some murders happen with generic results. While the actors involved gave their all and the film was well shot, the movie couldn't have been more different from the original. It's like making another sequel to Psycho 40 years later and making it a comedic spoof of Norman Bates tripping over the stairs leading to his mother's house to the motel. Normally, I would recommend even this in the slightest for fans to see a follow-up to a movie they may have loved or deemed a guilty pleasure. But in this case, stay far away. This movie was a waste, and especially for those who love the original, which I'm starting to, you will see conclusions to the characters you initially rooted for end up being completely destroyed here. Don't look in the basement, and certainly don't look this one up. Final thoughts. Okay, here's where I give my own guilty pleasure. Fine. There was one aspect I loved, one for the orderlies. The bigger one, Bishop, played by Scott Tepperman, was a pleasure to look at. Sure, him and the other psycho orderly were obviously inserted as comic relief. I still couldn't keep my eyes off such a hunk, at least in such a terrible misfire, to find pleasure in such the bear. Is this person gay? What the heck is the bear? I can't tell if I have sound in my video, but I'm going to attempt to play it and we'll see how it goes. So basically, this movie is about Sam coming back 40 years later after he presumably killed everybody. And then weird stuff starts to happen. Nothing makes sense. I think this movie is just weird for the sake of being weird. And that's why I couldn't get into it too much. There were certain scenes that kind of stood out and got my attention, intrigued me. And I like the idea of the doctors acting crazier than the patients. The one doctor who's the ghost of Dr. Stevens, I guess. The reincarnation of Dr. Stevens, the possession of Dr. Stevens. I don't know. I can't tell what's going on, but he's like the Wizard of Gore in the basement for no apparent reason. He plays Dr. Westmore, I guess. I don't know. I had problems with this movie. I wasn't too impressed. Sorry about that, laters.